Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Thanks for tuning in to the GSMc Social Media News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMc Podcast Network. Hello again, I'm your host, Kayla Moeller. I'm podcasting to you from the East Bay of San Francisco. But don't worry, I'm still social distancing. I just came home to be with my family for some quarantine quality time. But my family's also been social distancing for quite some time, so we are all being safe for the most part, keeping our hands washed, not really leaving the house. And, you know, some people have some differing opinions when it comes to social distancing. So I'm going to tell you a little story about something that just happened over the last couple of days. So, as you know, social distancing rules are getting more serious. You're not really supposed to be around any strangers or even your friends. And I got asked to be on a podcast, a doctor's podcast. I'm not going to say his name for obvious reasons, but this doctor wanted me to come onto his podcast and kind of host and ask him some questions that are related to the coronavirus and kind of get some answers firsthand from somebody who is a doctor experiencing it firsthand and seeing what the illness is doing. So this was a really good opportunity. I was excited. You know, it's newsworthy, professional. It would be great for my portfolio. It would be great to just expand my horizons. I was all pumped about it. And I just assumed that we would be doing this podcast virtually, like he would be where he is and I would be where I am, and we would just kind of video conference, or I'd call in or do Zoom, split screens, whatever for the podcast. It didn't even cross my mind that I would be meeting up with him because of all these social distancing rules, and he's a doctor. So he, you know, I should be taking that seriously. But he texted me and he was like, "Hey, I'd like to meet you before we actually do the podcast. So let's meet up tomorrow, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "What? Like, you want to meet up with me? I thought that we were going to do a video conference or something, or how's the podcast going to work?" And he was like, No. We're going to do the podcast like usual. You're going to come here and we're going to sit down together and do it. Social distancing is not helping and is not going to help." And I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe that he said that. I was like, oh my gosh, especially because I looked at his social media, and on his Instagram, he posted a photo of himself in a mask, holding up a sign that said, "I'm staying at work for you, so you stay at home for me." So he's preaching to social distance. So first of all, that's dangerous for me and my family. Like, I don't want to go and meet up with a stranger, especially a doctor who's exposing himself to coronavirus patients on a daily basis. You know, I don't want to go potentially expose myself from him and then come home and bring it to my family. That's just not a smart move. And also, he should be practicing what he's preaching. You know, if I were to see a podcast come out right now of a doctor and somebody in person with each other, I would be like, what the heck are they doing? Like, what? Shouldn't they be social distancing? Why are they sitting there together talking about coronavirus and not social distancing? Even the news is doing it. If you watch the news lately, it's all from split screens. There's one person at the anchor desk instead of two, and people are reporting from home. It's just a different time. So I completely assumed that we would be doing the podcast in a similar fashion, like from split screens, but I guess not. He wanted to meet up with me twice. He wanted to meet up with me beforehand, make sure he likes me, I guess, and then meet up with me again for the podcast. And I just found that to be a bit odd. So I said, thanks for the opportunity, but I'm going to have to pass. Good luck, stay safe, take care, all of that. And he said, it doesn't matter if you quarantine for X amount of days, like blah, 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 but I understand you feel like you have to protect yourself. So I think what he meant is like, it's kind of inevitable. We're all going to end up being exposed to the virus at some point. So he was just kind of like, what, just hurry up and do it. So I guess I don't know. I guess I understand where he's coming from, but also at the same time, I just thought it would be a little bit irresponsible of me to just go pretty much run into the arms of a doctor who's been exposing himself to coronavirus on a daily basis and then go back home and see my family. I just didn't think that that was a smart idea, so I passed on it. But it's just kind of interesting to see how people's opinions are on this because, I mean, yeah, he's a doctor, but some doctors aren't always right, you know, so maybe he's wrong and he's promoting something he shouldn't be. I don't really know. It's just the whole situation was a little bit bizarre to me, so I just kind of decided to remove myself. I don't know if that was being over precautious or what, but I don't know. It's just really not worth it to me right now. I'm going to kind of try my best to social distance. So I passed. And then also because I've been saying in all of my podcasts to practice social distancing. So I don't want to go and be a hypocrite myself, you know, and go and meet up with somebody. That would just be irresponsible. So I decided against it. Okay. So anyways, speaking of doctors, yesterday was National Doctors Day. Seems fitting enough. People expressed their gratitude for doctors all across social media. They shared personal, wonderful stories about doctors who are helping fight coronavirus, yes, but they also shed light on all the good work that doctors do on a normal basis too, and not just during a pandemic, because doctors are awesome all the time, not just now. And Forbes shared a great article highlighting 15 heroic firsthand stories from the coronavirus front lines. And I enjoyed it, so check that out if that's something sounds like you would like to read. So let's get into the history of National Doctors Day. It's pretty interesting because it all started with a physician's wife back in 1933. She knew the importance of these people and really wanted to set a day aside to honor them and thank them. So in order to do so, she started collecting greeting cards, thank you cards, and handing them out. And then she also started placing flowers on the graves of doctors who had passed away. And the tradition kind of took off from there. And they were doing it every year. It wasn't officially recognized until 1990. It had overwhelming support from both the House and the Senate. And President George Bush signed off on March 30th, officially becoming a National Doctors Day. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I also want to give you guys an update on my friend Matt King. He's stuck in Peru. I talked about him last week, and I've gotten some updates from his social media, and I've talked to him and asked him a couple questions. So as of I think it was yesterday, the Ministry of Health showed up at his hostel that he's stuck at and just showed up and said, 60 of you have been selected and you need to pack up all of your stuff right now and you're coming with us. Nobody saw this coming. It just kind of came out of nowhere. And I guess they picked people who are more at risk and then maybe a couple other random people. They're not exactly sure how they picked the 60 that they chose to remove. But everybody was to take all of their things out. The Ministry of Health was coming by, spraying everything down with disinfectant, cleaning all of everything. It looked like a huge mess. And it turns out they took the 60 people to a hotel. And they are to be quarantined in their rooms for at least 2 weeks. No coming out at all. and the Peruvian government will bring them food to their doors. And it's kind of scary because they sprayed everybody down with bleach. Like, there's people in hazmat suits coming in, and they were like spraying their clothes before they were removed from the hostel. It looked crazy. And Matt, he's still in the hostel. He didn't get chosen to leave. So I'm not really sure when he'll be released. And there's some planes that are coming and going from the States. So he could potentially get back. But the whole issue is that he's not allowed to even step outside of his hostel at all. There's armed guards everywhere. And the international airport is like hundreds of miles away. So he could run into issues on the way too. So he just has to stay at the hostel. But maybe this new technique of removing some of the guests will kind of help move things along. I'm not sure really what their agenda is, but maybe they're trying something new, and maybe that's a good thing. So I hope he gets to come home soon. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the things that we're doing here in the U.S. for actual patients. And we've got a whole lot of makeshift stuff going on, and I'm going to talk about it, so I'll be right back.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Hello, I am back. I just talked about National Doctors Day, and I gave an update on my friend Matt, who's been stuck in Peru and still is. So now I'm going to get into some crazy stuff that we have going on in the U.S. So NYU is actually going to go ahead and have its senior medical students graduate early and head out into the field to try and help and combat the virus. So in total, the university has 122 students who fit the criteria, who are senior students set to graduate but didn't because everything got cut short. And they asked them if any of them would be willing to just, graduate early and go ahead and start their internships now, like right this second in New York hospitals or wherever they're needed. And 69 of the students volunteered and said yes. So they should be setting out to get to work in these hospitals. They're just kind of working out the logistics right now. But we kind of need all the help that we can get. So that's a pretty good idea. I mean, these students, they're pretty much as prepared as they can be. They just are 3 months shy of graduation. So I think that they're ready considering the circumstances. CNN talked to one of the students who volunteered. Her name is Gabrielle Meyer, and she told them, quote, "Knowing that we are waiting to graduate and join the workforce, that we have the skill set that seems needed and valuable right now, it was such an easy decision to join my co-residents and my co-interns," end quote. And, good for her. It must be a really scary time to be graduating med school right now. It's scary to graduate anything, but especially med school and then get thrown into this. I mean, they have not no experience, but it's not like they're seasoned veteran doctors. And that is just a really scary time to be thrown into the field like that. And how brave are all 69 of those students? And this whole tactic of these med school students graduating early and going out there is being thought about elsewhere too, not just at NYU, but I think they're the ones kind of leading the charge in the whole graduating early thing. So maybe if this works out, more people will follow suit. And like I said, we need all the help that we can get. So it's a really good idea. And I like how they're not saying, oh no, you have to. They asked who would be willing to do it. And then still 69 people said yes. And I think that's great. And some of these new doctors may be starting out their career working in a makeshift hospital tent in Central Park or on a naval ship. A grassy part of Central Park has been converted into a 68-bed field hospital serving as a respiratory unit specifically for coronavirus patients. And on top of that, a U.S. Navy hospital ship has docked in New York Harbor to serve as a coronavirus hospital as well, and this one has 1,000 beds. And one of these Navy hospital ships also arrived at a port in Los Angeles, I think like 2 weeks ago, to do the same thing and help house patients there too. However, the difference is that the Navy ship that's in LA, it's called Mercy, is not being used for coronavirus patients. It's being used for just patients who have nothing to do with coronavirus to kind of keep them separate away from the hospitals, because a lot of these people are just like, people who have underlying health conditions or are compromised, like cancer patients and stuff like that. So they're being held on this ship to kind of isolate them from the virus. And then it's also allowing hospitals to really just hone in and focus on coronavirus. And also, LA is working on converting the convention center that's downtown into a huge makeshift hospital. And they got a shipment of equipment over the weekend, and they started unpacking it, and they're creating another field hospital out of this big, huge convention center. And that's so weird because I was just at this convention center last month, like in early February, for an art show. And it's a pretty big place. It's like kind of almost like a really huge warehouse. It has tall ceilings. It's, concrete. And it's just so weird that I was just there for something fun and happy and artistic. And now it's going to be used for sick and dying people. It's just crazy. It just transformed. And it was just last month in the beginning of February. And now look at what they're doing with it. It's just crazy, crazy. So in some of these shipments of equipment to kind of set up these makeshift hospitals around California, there was a big shipment of ventilators, which is great. Woohoo, right? It was 170 ventilators, in which everybody's trying to scramble for ventilators, but especially big places like New York and California. So it was great that California got sent 170 ventilators, but these ventilators ended up all being faulty and broken. So instead of making some huge stink about it all, our governor of California, Gavin Newsom, decided, hey, you know what? We have them. Okay, they're broken, so let's fix them. And he could have sent them back, waited for a new working shipment, all that, but he decided that would take too long, so he took matters into his own hands, and he sent them off to be fixed. And he was quoted saying, rather than lamenting about it, rather than complaining about it, rather than pointing fingers, and rather than generating headlines in order to generate more stress and anxiety, the machines are being fixed in state. So that's pretty cool. Good for him. These ventilators were sent to a company called Bloomberg Energy to be fixed, and they're expected to be up and running and put to use this week. And so far, California has obtained about 4,000 additional ventilators, and we still need a lot more. Because 4,000 and the 170 broken ones that we got, that's still not going to cut it. It sounds like a lot, but this virus is spreading. And I think that we're going to see a lot more makeshift hospitals popping up as time goes on. The stay-at-home order just got pushed back again till like May 1st. So we definitely have at least a month to go for sheltering in place. And a lot can happen in that time. And I think we're going to need more makeshift hospitals, more ventilators, all that. But the more people who kind of sort of shelter in place, the longer this is going to take. Everybody should just Shelter in place. Stop seeing your friends. Okay, after the break, I'm going to tell you guys about an Australian man who got some magnets stuck up his nose. And this guy is an astrophysicist, and he got some magnets in his nose. So stay tuned, and I'll tell you about it.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, I just got done talking about all those makeshift hospitals that are popping up all around California and New York. But listen to this story about this Australian guy. This is hilarious. So this astrophysicist, his name is Dr. Daniel Reardon, decided he was going to try to use his knowledge to do some good and help out with the coronavirus. So he wanted to take it upon himself and invent some sort of necklace type gadget that will prevent you from touching your face. So kind of like if you were to go touch your face, it would buzz on you or something and remind you not to. And in doing so, he wasn't very successful, wasn't working out. So he got bored with it, kind of decided to just give up and have a laugh and play around. So he started playing around with the magnets, putting them on his face, putting them on his cheeks, his earlobes, messing around. And then a problem happened when he put the magnets up his nose. So some of them got stuck up there. And then he was like, oh no, but he didn't panic. So he used stronger magnets to try to get out the ones that were in his nose, and then those stronger magnets ended up getting stuck in there too. And then he was like, okay, still I can do this. And then he went and got a pair of pliers and tried to get them out that way, but then the pliers were sticking to the magnets, and then it was like kind of crushing his nose, and it was super painful. So then he ended up having to go to the hospital. And the kicker here is that his partner works at the hospital. So his partner and all his doctor friends and nurses had a fun time with that. Totally made fun of this guy, Dr. Reardon, for getting magnets stuck in his nose. I mean, he's an astrophysicist. He's a pretty smart guy, so it's just funny. It goes to show that, little silly accidents can happen to anybody. So it's fine. They got the magnets out now, and he's all good. But maybe he should just practice normal social distancing for now. And he was quoted saying, I think I'll give up and let someone more qualified give it a go. So he's being a good sport about it, kind of having a laugh. And he's right. Some qualified people are giving it a go, not with a necklace per se to prevent you from touching your face, but with sleep apnea machines. There isn't much info out there on it right now because I don't know how successful it's been, but I see a lot of stuff floating around Twitter suggesting that doctors who are short on ventilators are trying out converting machines originally used for sleep apnea into makeshift ventilators. And now, because of this idea, these people in London are building these machines directly and specifically for COVID-19. So University College in London is working with Mercedes Formula One to build this device that will deliver oxygen to a patient's lungs without needing a ventilator, which is really great because ventilators are super invasive and these aren't. So they're trying out these devices, and if the results are positive, then up to 1,000 of these things can be produced per day. And to be clear, this is a CPAP device, which stands for Continuous Positive Airway Pressure. And like I said, they're a lot less invasive than ventilators. And China and Italy have used these to help some of their patients. So now they're kind of taking a deeper look into it and redesigning some to specifically help out COVID patients. So hopefully this works out and this can start bringing some relief to hospitals because they can be made more rapidly than ventilators and they're less invasive. And yeah, I think it's just a better alternative all around if it does end up working how they're kind of planning it to be. But things can go wrong and we'll see. I don't want to get everybody's hopes up because there's just not much information on it right now, but that's just something that I thought I would share with you guys. And another promising aspect that people are looking into are dogs. So dogs have been used to sniff out cancers, malaria, drugs, diabetes, all these things. So why not train them to smell out coronavirus? And this can be helpful because we're obviously experiencing a huge shortage of tests. So this could be a great way to detect it without a test. Dogs hopefully will be able to smell it in a person even if they're not symptomatic. It's non-invasive and it can be done quickly and effectively. And the actual test can take days to return. It's super uncomfortable. If you don't know how the test is, what they do is they shove this long, skinny cotton swab all the way up your nose, so far up your nose, like pretty much in your brain. I mean, not really, but it's really far up there. So would you rather that or would you rather get sniffed by a cute little dog? Each disease has a unique odor. So if they can capture the odor of coronavirus, then they can train dogs to recognize it. And it'd also be good to have these dogs at places like airports and just train stations, crowded places where people are doing a lot of traveling, because once this kind of gets under control, then this would be a good way to detect people who have it as to not reinfect the population. Because, people can be walking around, like we know, asymptomatically, but the dog can still sniff them. We can let them know that they're a carrier, and then they can get treated right away. So I think that's a great idea. And I was thinking about, okay, well, that's great and all, but how do they train these dogs? How do they get them to know what it smells like? So I looked into it because I was curious, and I'll tell you about it. These dogs, they get trained in one thing. So you don't have a drug dog who also sniffs out cancer, also sniffs out diabetes. A drug dog is a drug dog, and then a disease dog is a disease dog, and they are only assigned to one disease. So there's a cancer sniffing dog, malaria sniffing dog, Parkinson's disease sniffing dog, and so on. You technically could train a dog to detect multiple diseases, but then the human wouldn't really have a way of knowing which disease the dog is detecting. And it's been an idea to train dogs in 2 or multiple diseases. For example, have them raise a right paw for diabetes and a left paw for cancer, but then that would get confusing and the dog could obviously make a mistake and then it could lead to a misdiagnosis and all that. So it's just better to train a dog for one thing. So how they do it is they odorize the illness, or at least they put a little teeny tiny droplet of it in a petri dish, and these petri dishes are behind a metal gate, so it's not like the dog can eat it or anything. And they're all lined up next to other petri dishes, and there's going to be other things that the dogs have smelled before in the other petri dishes, and then one of them will hold the illness or virus or disease, and then that's a new smell for them, so they'll stop by it to kind of check it out and get a better whiff, because it's in a dog's nature to smell out new things. So once they do that and they stop on that particular petri dish, then the human trainer will kind of praise the dog and be like, yeah, good boy, who's a good dog, pet him on the head and give him a treat. And then they'll keep doing that over and over until the dog kind of realizes that, okay, that's the smell I'm supposed to be looking for all the time. I get a treat and the human likes me, so that's my thing. So then they just kind of come back for a couple hours every day until the dog is completely trained, and then they're used to help out sick people. All right, coming up next, I'm going to talk about how a single woman, costs a grocery store $35,000. So stay tuned.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMc Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello again. I just got done talking about CPAP machines that are being converted to makeshift ventilators, and I talked about the potential for coronavirus sniffing dogs. Now I'm going to get into grocery store lady. There are so many people trying to do good in this world, and it just totally sucks when there's a bad apple and they come along and undermine everybody's hard work. Like this woman in Pennsylvania who decided to play some sort of sick-minded, evil prank on a grocery store. This whole thing is beyond me. This lady came in and she started coughing everywhere. Literally on top of the food, on top of the produce, up and down aisles, everywhere. So much coughing on everything that the grocery store ended up having to throw away $35,000 worth of food. That is so much food. $35,000 worth of food. She pretty much dang near coughed on everything in that store. Food is precious always, of course, and we have enough problem with food waste in this country as it is, but especially right now. Are you freaking kidding me, lady? Did she think it would be a funny thing to go into a grocery store in a time like this and start coughing on everything? She was coughing on things and making threats while doing it, saying, I'm sick, I have coronavirus, and coughing on things. Like, what is this lady's deal? And she's sick, yes, but she's sick in the head. I mean, oh my goodness gracious. And then on top of all of this, she tried to steal beer. Like, she was grabbing a 12-pack of beer, and the employees were like, ma'am, you got to get out of here. Stop doing that. Leave. And then she was like, fine, and tried to leave with a bunch of beer. Oh my goodness. And she probably does not have coronavirus, but the grocery store still had to throw away all of the food to be cautious, but also because that's still disgusting even if she's healthy. I mean, who wants cough on their food? That's just gross. So she was charged with 4 felonies. I guess she's known to be a menace in the community, according to the police department. She seems like a horrific woman. One of her felony charges was like making terroristic threats. So she's in a lot of trouble, which she should be. And I went to Trader Joe's the other day to stock up on food, and they had an employee standing at the entrance with a hand sanitizer bottle, pumping it into customers' hands as they walk through the door. And I thought this was awesome because everyone in the store's hands were then clean. because people go in there and they touch everything, put things back, and all of that. So it gave me a peace of mind knowing that you couldn't get in the door without a squirt of sanitizer. It's just a really small thing, but that can really help. And I was glad to see that they were doing that, because everybody in there technically, I mean, not super, super clean hands. There's only so much sanitizer can do, but at least somebody didn't just pick their nose and touch something that I was going to touch, you know? And some grocery store workers and just grocery store chains are starting to try to make their employees wear more protective gear, as they should be, because they come into contact with so many people on the daily, and they are at a very high risk of catching the virus. But we're having a shortage of protective gear in the hospitals, so grocery store employees are really having a hard time. And it's not like they shouldn't have them, it's just that, yeah, the hospitals need them more, but these people working in the grocery stores are coming into contact with, I don't know, hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people a day. And I wish that we had enough for everybody to go around, but we just don't right now. But something that can help, and something that I've seen and that I'd like to point out, is that the couple of times that I've been out in public for essential errands, like going to the pharmacy or buying food, I see people doing disrespectful things that might not seem like a lot in the moment, but it is a lot. So I see people taking off their disposable gloves, which, you know, good. They're wearing gloves, trying to be protective, whatever. But they're taking off their gloves after shopping and then just throwing them in their cart rather than in the trash can. Why? Are you expecting somebody else to dispose of your gross, used, virus-ridden gloves? No. And then the person that has to throw your stuff away comes into contact with not only everything they've touched, but everything that you've touched. It's just disrespectful. And I've seen masks and sanitizer wipes. They just throw them in the trash can. I see people just put all their groceries in the car and then take off their gloves and put them in the cart and go push the cart away. That doesn't make any sense to me. No one wants to pick up after you. It's more of a risk to them or to the employee who has to do it. I mean, they deal with enough, so clean up after yourself. I've seen so many carts, and I know it's an issue because I've seen people complaining about it on social media. So I don't know who these people are who are taking their gloves off and masks off and just leaving them around, but stop doing that. That's gross. It's just such an easy thing to take your stuff off and throw it in the trash can. We're all in this together, and it's up to you to do your part. It's really not difficult to just clean up after yourself. All right, moving on. Let's talk about those government checks that are supposed to be sent out to everybody pretty soon. Well, not everybody. So if you make less than $75,000 a year, then you should be receiving the full $1,200. And if you have children 17 and under, then you'll get $500 additional dollars for each child that you have. But if you make more than $99,000 a year, then you're not getting a check. And if you're a college student or someone like me, whose parents still claim you on their taxes, then you also won't be receiving anything. And that super sucks because I no longer have my assistant job. And now I also don't qualify for that government check because my parents still claim me on their taxes. And I'm over the age of 17, so my parents don't get that additional $500 for me. So that's a pretty ugly loophole. Now, if you do qualify, do you have to do anything to get the check? No, you don't sign up for anything. It's just automatic. If you've already filed a tax return this year or last year, just recently, or you've received any Social Security benefits, then they already have your information and it will just be sent to you. And if your tax refund was direct deposit, then this check will also just be a direct deposit. But if it's not, then it's fine. It will just be mailed to the address on file. There's a lot more information on this, but the IRS is asking that you don't bombard them with phone calls and instead just go to their website, and they're keeping things pretty up to date. So you can check that out, and they have all this stuff in there and more details.
The GSMc Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMc Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMc Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMc in the search bar.
Hello, I'm back. It's just me now. We heard from my cousin Sammy telling us about her situation with moving to online classes and the good things and the bad things about it. So next I'm going to talk about John Krasinski's YouTube show. So John decided to start a YouTube channel series called Some Good News, or SGN for short. And it's exactly how it sounds. It's a series dedicated to only good and positive stories. And in its premiere, John invited fellow actor Steve Carell on to be his guest. And John and Steve, we were on the show The Office together, if you didn't know. So this was like a really awesome reunion for viewers to see. They've kind of been asking for The Office to have a big reunion for a really long time. Haven't really seen that happen yet. But this was kind of a nice little tidbit. And also this year is The Office's 15th anniversary. And in addition to John's co-star, he also invited a 15-year-old girl onto the show who is a cancer survivor who recently just had her last treatment. And when she returned home to her neighborhood, her street was filled with people congratulating her and cheering her on. So it was a really nice thing to see her come on the show and kind of tell her story. So if this sounds like something you'd like to check out, then you can just go on YouTube and search Some Good News, and it'll come up, and you can fill yourself with some positivity. And all right, so if you're a social media user, then by now I am certain you've seen all the rave over the new documentary series on Netflix called Tiger King. It is a wild show that's captivating audiences everywhere, high and low. But my question is, are we all just really bored in quarantine, or is it actually a good show? It's not like anything we've ever seen before. I'm not even quite sure how to describe it, but I'll try. It's basically about these competing exotic zoos whose primary purpose is to house big cats like tigers and lions. And they're all in the United States, and they're all run by lunatics. And there's murder, attempted murder, embezzling money, arson, fraud. And this main guy, Joe Exotic is what he calls himself, is a homosexual man who somehow, I want to say, brainwashes young straight men into falling in love with him and marrying him. And when I say young men, I'm talking about like 19-year-olds, and he's like over 30 years older than them. So it's a little bit weird. He has more than one husband at a time. So he's a polygamist. There's just a lot of curveballs in it. And there's also a lot of backstabbing and conning and lying. And there's really little regard for the actual animals themselves. It's all about money and fame, and they're kind of losing sight of what really these zoos are for. And it's a pretty chaotic documentary, and there's so much stuff going on that it's a bit hard to follow. But I guess that's the point, to really emphasize how messy it all is. So if you're bored in quarantine and looking for a new show, then check out Tiger King on Netflix. Then you'll kind of be up to date on all the memes that people are sharing everywhere. There's been an abundance of them that has come out about this show. So yeah, it's quite entertaining. So check that out. And now this whole Tiger King thing is in the public eye. So social media users are noticing old photos of Britney Spears with people who were in this documentary. So Britney's iconic 2001 VMA performance involved live animals. I think she performed Slave, like the one that's like, I'm a slave for you. Anyways, so she held up like a yellow snake. You probably remember, or if you would see the picture, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that. So she's holding this big, huge yellow snake. And there's a bunch of like tigers in the background. There's people dressed up as tigers. It's this really jungly like performance. And what do you know? People started looking closer and realized that Doc Antle from the show was present there in the back of her performance wrestling a tiger. So I guess he provided the tiger for this performance because, I mean, I guess these are the people that you would go to if you needed a live exotic animal like that. And it's just funny because these crazy people that are coming to light now have just been hiding in plain sight all these years, I guess. And then because of this, fans started diving deeper. And then they also found a picture of Britney Spears sitting in the audience at the VMAs. And next to her is Carole Baskin. And she's also a prominent character from this show. And I don't know where Joe Exotic was during all of this, who's the main character. But, I mean, I don't know why Doc Antle was picked for it over him. I'm not really sure what that was. But it's just funny because all of these feuds between all the zoo owners was alive and well back then in the early 2000s. So it's just kind of interesting to see them a part of such a legendary part of entertainment. And now about 20 years later, here they are in the absolute forefront of entertainment. So it's just kind of funny how life works. You would have never thought anything or looked twice at those people. And then here they are, famous as can be now because of this ridiculous show. And speaking of animals, if you're bored and you have the space, I would encourage you to consider fostering an animal right now. You're stuck in the house, they're stuck in a cage, so you can kind of help each other out and keep each other company. It's a great way for the animals to get out and get some love and get acclimated to people. And if you're always like, oh, I wish I could have a pet, but I don't have time, well, guess what? Now you have time. So I think this would be a really good time for you to just get a little guy, get a little buddy, feed him, give him some love. And it doesn't have to be permanent. And it would still be really helping out the animal and the shelter as well. So that's something to consider. Okay, that's all for today. Try to stay in the house, keep your hands washed, you know the drill. So thank you for listening. This has been the GSMc Social Media News Podcast brought to you by the GSMc Podcast Network. Once again, I am your host, Kayla Moeller. And if you could do me a favor, subscribe to the show, write a little review. That would be great. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks, guys, and have a wonderful night.
Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMc to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.